two schools in London have come under severe pressure from Islamists. First of all, there's been this Berkeley Primary School, which has told pupils they're not allowed to wear pro-Palestine badges and stickers and flags. And so in response, they've been sent bomb threats. Masked men have climbed up the school gates to put Palestine flags on the school. Parents and activists have been campaigning to overturn this policy, and so at points the school has even had to close early because teachers fear for their lives, essentially. Elsewhere in North London, we've had the Michaela School incident where the school has been felt compelled to ban prayer rituals, and for that it's been again faced with threats, an intimidation campaign. Teachers have had rocks thrown at their houses, and it's even being dragged through the High Court over this issue. Candice, what the hell is going on here?
I think there's a pattern. I think we've seen it in various incidents. I mean, we also saw it with that school in the north, like you were saying, where the teacher was forced to go into hiding. We've also seen incidents in France. I think that what needs to happen is that when religious zealotry emerges like this, in a context where teachers are being threatened, pupils are being threatened, death threats are being issued, there needs to be a strong response from the police and from the community. And I feel like what happens is the schools are forced into a defensive posture, like with this Berkeley Primary, where they said that they're going to go online. Well, no, they should not be forced to go online, and a school shouldn't, and a teacher shouldn't be forced to go into hiding. The people who issued these threats should be told that will not be tolerated in a free society. But that isn't what seems to be happening.
And Tom, it seems almost incredible the way that the authorities often tend to side with the thugs, with the Islamists, or at least whether it's by just simply not protecting the schools adequately, or we don't know what the outcome of the Michaela School case is, but we already know that they've been given a huge amount of legal aid to pursue this case, despite the backdrop being, it's clear which side is the Islamist side and which side is the side of secular and liberal education.
I'm always struck by the double standards in this area, because if you had a situation where you had hardline religious conservatives or people who wanted to impose their particular political or religious view on a state secular school, if that had been the sort of blue rinse brigade of old, people would have laughed them out of town. And certainly if there was any kind of suggestion of violence or threats, that's something that would have been dealt with very clearly. There would have been a moral clarity about that particular thing. And yet, when the individuals in question are Muslim and when the cause in question is Palestine, suddenly people lose any interest. I mean, that's the most striking thing, is that people just back away from this particular discussion. They like to pretend that it's not really going on, that there haven't been a spate of cases like this in recent weeks. And I think one thing that's been, in recent years, I should say, and that I find completely bizarre. I mean, it's just obvious that this is a clear-cut threat. I mean, one thing that's been interesting about both the Berkeley Primary School situation and the Michaela Community School situation is that you have had at least pushback from the school themselves. I mean, the thing that originally sparked the protest outside Berkeley Primary School was because of the fact that there was this incident where students had showed up to, I think it was a Children in Need Day, with all these Palestine badges, and obviously the school was concerned about some of the things they were saying. It was seen to be extreme and so on, sent letters to the parents as a consequence of that, didn't want this divisive politics to pollute the school environment. And obviously with the Michaela Community School, where you have had this High Court case over their refusal to have a prayer room, which is for a mix of practical reasons, they don't have the space to have it, but also because of the fact that they really try to avoid anything which creates any kind of differentiation between the pupils, which segregates them along racial or religious lines. And as a consequence of this, they have this philosophy of kind of compromises. You can't expect the school to perfectly reflect your own accommodations will be made, but at the same time the point is to stress what they have in common and to make sure they have loads of kind of common activities which aren't carved up along racial and religious lines. So they have been putting up a fight, but as you say, there's not any of that backup from the authorities necessarily. There's not any of that backup from broader sort of civil society.
And the government even?
The government are quiet about all of these whenever they come up. They just stare at their shoelaces and hope that it goes away. But it's not going away, and it's something that we're going to see more and more of, particularly as it's been seen. Has been quite clear since the Hamas-Israel war began, is the fact that young people are being kind of used as sort of a stage army politically speaking, in certain schools. They are being used to try and push back against some of the boundaries to protest, to go on a kind of strike action, which has been organised in certain parts of East London and so on. So this isn't going away. You just hope that the people in positions of authority were willing to take it on, because what is at threat here is, as you say, the kind of secular education, which surely should be something that people are willing to defend, particularly in a diverse society as ours is.
Yeah. And Candice, I mean, what do you make of the fact that, you know, the silence of the left on all these questions? They're either silent or actively support it. I mean, there have been a lot of criticisms in The Guardian and places like that of the Michaela School for doing multiculturalism wrong and not backing into the, you know, not caving into the demands to have a prayer room. You know, they said they're being too inflexible, things like that. What do you make of that aspect of it?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's two things going on. I think one is the fear of appearing Islamophobic, when this is in no way being Islamophobic. This is just not having tolerance for extremist or coercive behaviour, because, you know, as Catherine Birbalsingh had said, they have a very multicultural school. They've never had any issues, but it became an issue when a group of pupils started behaving in a way that they were bullying other pupils, and they were forcing other pupils to be more religiously observant than they otherwise would have been. So that was a very specific incident that happened. So it's not Islamophobic at all. And then I think the other thing as well is they confuse it with freedom of religion. So, you know, why couldn't you have a prayer room? What's wrong with having a prayer room? But as Catherine Birbalsingh has said, this would go against the ethos of the school, because the teachers wouldn't be able to manage it. The pupils would have to do it on their own. And up until then, there was never an issue with having a prayer room. Nobody minded until this sort of extremist behaviour emerged. And I think that they're not confronting the reality of the situation. And I think that is a lot to do with fear, you know, with not wanting to appear bigoted or racist in any way. But it's got nothing to do with that. It's upholding secular values. It's upholding free expression. It's also upholding the right of individuals to be as religious as they choose to be without pressure from others.
And it's important to stress that often when we're talking about, you know, the rights to religious observance in Islam, we're generally talking about Islamism and not Islam itself. You know, there's been a lot of good reporting on the fact that, you know, in Pakistan and Turkey, they don't stop school for prayers and things like that. You know, it's not technically a religious thing. It's often just quite hardline people insisting they have their way and insisting that public space bend to their will almost.
And it's quite clear as well that, and I think you see this in many of the protests which have erupted around particular schools, is the fact that, yes, there's going to be an element of a couple of parents or families who are particularly upset by this, but also it's leapt upon by a certain type of kind of Islamist activists. You see a lot of the same faces at the same demonstrations, and they use it as an opportunity to try to get some sort of propaganda win. And we shouldn't lose sight of how disgusting this behaviour is, because of the fact that they are essentially kind of bringing all of this attention, all of this aggro to what should be a place in which, you know, in the case of this, primary school children are supposed to be there, you know, learning their ABCs, and yet there's aggravating protests outside the door. There's rumours swirling online about a young girl supposedly being bullied because she was Palestinian, something that the school in question has said they found no evidence of whatsoever, and just trying to use this to further a political agenda. And, you know, the children's education and well-being be damned. So, you know, aside from anything else, this is really incredibly disgusting behaviour. But as you say, these things are often not necessarily just the organic concerns of Muslim parents making themselves felt. It's often something which has become very politicised, very leapt upon, and weaponised by certain groups of people who are really desperate to push at the boundaries and chalk up some kind of win for themselves in that sense.